Welcome to our next edition of the Foundation Speaker Series. My name is Karen Musanti. Today I am honored to be joined by Mr. Gene Barr. Gene is the President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. The PA Chamber is the state's largest broad-based business advocacy association. Gene joined the PA Chamber in 2003 as the Vice President of Government Affairs and became President in 2011. Prior to joining the PA Chamber, Gene has more than 40 years of experience in various facets of government, politics, and business operations. Gene is a member of our board of directors and a perennial speaker at our summer program, Pennsylvania for Enterprise Week. We always love it when Gene comes to talk with the students about the very difficult and sometimes convoluted topic of how government impacts business. He simplifies it a bit for our students. Gene, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invite. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, let's start from the beginning, all the way back to when you were a young man. What I didn't mention is that you were a political science major. So when you were in high school, was politics something that interested you, or how did you become a political science major?
You know, it really is kind of funny. From the time I was probably 9 years old, I was going to be a lawyer. And it's kind of like, what do you need to do? How do you get to be a lawyer? Well, you go to law school, but what do you major in? Well, I don't know. I always liked history. And so from the time going all the way up into high school, I was like, I'll probably major in history. And then interestingly, when I was a senior in high school, I took a course called Political Ideas. I just loved it. And it was all these really old guys like John Locke and all that. And for some reason, it just captivated me. So I said, I'm going to major in political science. Now, interestingly, I had also, kind of got the political bug. In my neighborhood where I grew up, right outside Philadelphia, the people down the street were heavily engaged in politics, and they'd come up and the parents would get together and they would start talking, and it would invariably turn to politics. And I was like this 10, 11-year-old kid. I kept trying to listen in. This sounds really neat. This sounds really neat. And then, my parents would kick me out of the room and everything else. But so I developed that interest, but I had the history too. But then I went like, I'm just going to go major. At the time, it was called politics, which I guess is a more pragmatic way of looking at it. And it was more pragmatic in terms of how politics work or how political science might work at the application level.
Yeah. So then you went on to St. Joseph's and studied political science, politics.
Yes.
Any clubs or any groups that you were involved with there that really furthered your involvement and really got you interested in saying, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, you know what? When I was a freshman in college, I started working the polls. Because I commuted back and forth to college, I had 3 part-time jobs, so it wasn't a whole lot of time for groups and et cetera. So I lived at home, worked 3 jobs, and also did politics. And it just kind of got me, working the polls is about as kind of basic as you can get in terms of the political life. And from there, when I was a senior in college, I was appointed to fill a vacancy on our borough council. We had a little town right outside Philadelphia, 3,000 person borough. We had a police officer killed in the line of duty. So one of the other members of borough council was appointed to his slot on the police department. So they needed somebody else. And here's this 21-year-old kid. They went, all right, yeah, well, I guess we'll stick him on borough council. Then I ran the next election and won and served 10 years on borough council. So that's kind of how it all went, and just kind of took off from there. Worked at the refinery for BP, and they found out I had an interest, and that one thing led to another.
Sure. Yeah, and I mentioned previously that, you've held many different career options in the past. You've worked for many different organizations, and it hasn't always been about politics. Talk a little bit about, because I think young people think that when they graduate high school or when they graduate college, they have to know exactly what they need to do for the rest of their life. They don't get that many people change their jobs so many times in the course of their working time span. So talk a little bit about how that transition happened for you and how you have to kind of change with the times.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, people not only change employers, you're right, they change careers. Sometimes that requires additional education. Sometimes you can just kind of morph into that. But for me, as I said, I always wanted to be a lawyer. Interestingly, I never wound up going to law school, took the law boards twice, wanted to do criminal law, saw that assistant district attorneys didn't make a whole lot of money. Having paid my own way through college, I went, I don't want to do 3 more years of this. And so then I started to think, well, maybe I'll go to work for a big corporation, and that will give me various options that I can look at. And I was fortunate enough to do that. And kids are always said, well, think about what you want to be in 5 and 10 years. And I always said, I'd like to work for a corporation and maybe lobby. Well, interestingly, I started work for them, and like 6 years later, I got moved to Atlanta to do that. And so I hadn't thought much more about that. What happens when you kind of set that and it happens in 5 or 6 years? But I did have the opportunity because of BP, working at the refinery, started shift work, worked labor relations as part of my human resources job, loved HR because it was like working with, right in the middle of everything. I mean, it was not theoretical, it was real. And then they moved me to Atlanta, where I lobbied a bunch of other states, and then they moved me to Cleveland. So I got to participate in the retail marketing side, and we did some acquisition. I found out what it takes to get business to go somewhere. How do we attract jobs? How do we keep jobs here? How do we attract investment? What makes businesses tick? What do they look for? And it was a great experience for the 3 years I was in Cleveland, while I was there. So I was fortunate to work for a company that provided a lot of different options, and allowed. I mean, they don't say to you, what do you want to do, and whatever you want here it is. But it did give a lot of options.
Sure. And that leads us right to what you're doing today. And thankfully, that led you to us in the PA Chamber. And so maybe talk a little bit about, students may know, they may have heard of what chambers of commerce are. They have one where they live, but maybe they don't understand what the PA Chamber's role is and what you exactly do.
Really good question, because there's a lot of uncertainty and confusion about what's the difference between the state chamber and local chambers and the U.S. Chamber. And we are, as you noted at the outset, the largest broad-based business advocacy group in Pennsylvania. So when we say advocate, we're basically businesses lobbyists, because businesses can't always be here. So we have to figure out, and this is the part of the job that I love, it's working the policy side. What policies do we need to get Pennsylvania to adopt that will keep the students that graduate from your program in Pennsylvania? How do we do that? What do we need to do to make sure that our tax policies are right, that our labor policies are right, that our education and workforce policies are right? And obviously, we're all working on right now in this climate, how do we make sure that we give equal opportunity to everybody? We've been working on that from a criminal justice reform side, but how do we make sure that people, regardless of the color of their skin or where they come from or their gender, have the opportunity to get the career that they love? How do we do that? So we have to create the policies that do that, but in doing so, we have to make sure that we continue to make Pennsylvania an attractive place for companies to invest in, to put their sweat equity, to put their hard-earned dollars into this, whether they're a small company looking to open or whether they're a major corporation looking to open. Smaller chambers, we work with them, they're part of ours, they're members of ours, they're our partners, and they do the advocacy side too, but they get much more involved in the local community type out of necessity. They're a local community business advocacy group. So ours is the policy. We tend to kind of lead the policy discussions, working with our local chamber partners, and of course the U.S. Chamber focusing on the federal side. I serve on the board of the U.S. Chamber as well, and we work very closely with them. And because of course what happens on the federal side quite clearly matters to business as well.
Sure. So tell me about the everyday life of Gene Barr. If when you wake up in the morning, I'm going to guess that every day is completely different. One day you may be traveling to a different part of the state. One day you may be going in the office and doing a webinar, or you may be going to the Capitol and lobbying about something. I'm guessing every day is different, right?
Yeah, the traveling has been really cut back.
Sure.
This is the most unique time in my entire career. What we've spent 3 months doing is making sure that we can get business back up and running. When we were having this waiver process, we were trying to work with businesses to keep as many up and running as possible or get them back up and running. And now it's, as we bring Pennsylvania back, as we call it, as we try and get us out of the ditch we've had to put the vehicle in, with the vehicle being our state economy. How do we do that? What are the things we do? And just as importantly, what are the things we don't do as we try and bring this economy back? So that's been a little different, but overall, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've even had the chance to do some international trips because of the job. The state will say, we need somebody who can come here and talk about why Pennsylvania is a great place for people in Israel to invest, or France or Germany or Ireland or Brazil or Chile. These are all trips. I've had trips to Canada to talk about the trade alliances that we have. Last week we had the British trade minister here. We had to do it virtually. He was here back in October, November, talking about how our two nations can do a better job of opening up trade. And then, of course, it's, one, I have to run an organization here. We have roughly 50 employees at the building, in addition to the policy side. So you're right. I mean, every day, sometimes it's like running every other business, but then because of the policy stuff, it's not just statewide, sometimes nationwide, and of course, sometimes can take us out of the country. There's some real unique pieces of it.
I'm guessing that's what you enjoy the most. So every day is different.
Yeah, every day's different. That's exactly right.
Right. You also have a very public job. You have to deal with yourself being in the public. You have to deal with people having varying opinions about things that maybe the PA chamber decides to do or not to do. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that personally? How do you not take that home and let that affect you?
I think probably everybody does to a certain degree. You think about it, this is not one of the jobs, I can't shut this off at night. I go home, if I'm watching something on TV or reading the paper, I link it back in with either, I got to remember that tomorrow. I got to follow up on that. I have to think about how I construct that argument in favor of what we're doing. And you're right, not everybody is favorably disposed to what we're doing. I get some interesting emails and sometimes phone calls, and it is a very public facing job. And so sometimes people say, "Hey, I saw you on TV." My joke is you have to watch better television than that. And so, we do get those. And the one thing is that I will never do when somebody says, "I can't believe the chamber's taking that position." I never apologize for it, because we have looked at it. We are representing our 10,000 members across Pennsylvania. We have come up with a policy that, in our view, moves Pennsylvania forward, makes Pennsylvania a better place to invest, to live, to work, to play, and we're not going to apologize for doing any of those. And I think that once you start doing that, you devalue the position that your organization has taken, and you devalue the organization. We don't apologize for anything we do.
Very good. What advice would you give to a young person in high school considering going into political science or politics? What advice could you give to them? Is there anything that you might do differently, or any classes perhaps that you're thinking back, you're saying, I wish I would have taken a public speaking class earlier, or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great, because I've interviewed so many people who said, I was in politics and how do I get into it? Or I majored in this, I majored in that. My recommendation would be, take something else with it. For example, make sure you take economics. Make sure you take something that allows you to utilize that. And I am a big believer in liberal arts. I have a liberal arts degree education. But if you can combine it with something else that gives you the ability to say, I can take what I've learned about politics and I can combine it with this, because I now understand, in our case, how economics works. To me, the best thing about learning how economics works was the time that I spent at BP, because I saw how it worked on the ground. But to understand that, because not everybody can come up through a business, I was very fortunate to have that. Not everybody can do that. So as people look at what they want to do, a lot of times people focus solely on, what do I think I want to do? I'd also encourage them to say, what do I know I don't want to do? Because sometimes you get to a better answer by saying, what do I know I don't like? So if you say, man, I hate science. I really hate science. I don't want anything to do with science. Okay, set that aside. And now you've answered at least one of that, because I get people calling a lot and just kind of saying, thinking about making a career change. Can I talk to you? And of course, the answer is yes. And I always ask them that. Before I ask them, what do you want to do? I say, what do you know you don't want to do? And that takes a big piece of the equation out. So I would say the same thing to our students looking at that. Not only what do you like, what do you really know you don't like? And that's an important question to answer.
Process of elimination, yeah. So one of my last questions, I just want to talk about PFEW a bit. You've been involved with our organization for a long time. I know you've been a board member. You visit our program. You talk to our students. Just tell us a little bit about why PFEW is important to you and why you feel like it's important for students to attend.
I can't think of a more important thing to do than to educate people about what the system of economic choice, the system of free enterprise that we have in this country. And right now, it's many cases it's under attack, which is unfortunate, because people misinterpret what this system is. People look at it as it's Wall Street making decisions. The choice we have and the system we have is this. This system is one where all of us, you, me, everyone else, gets to make a choice every single day based on what they think is best for them and their family. That's really what this is. And when you look at people who are trying to be very prescriptive and say, we're going to take this away as an option and we're going to do this, look, I'm all in favor of, obviously, creating a system that's fair and safe for everybody. But the more I look at what these systems are, the more I'm firmly convinced that we as individuals, with the parameters of has to be safe, make the best choices for ourselves on a daily basis. That's what your organization does. It helps people talk about that system. It helps people talk about a system that has done more to bring people out of poverty than any system that man has ever invented, because it works. Is it 100%? Is it pristine? Does it do? Is it? No. I mean, there isn't. It's like, the old joke. It's the worst. It's the worst system ever, except for every other one. You are going to get some, if you want to call them inequalities, or you are going to get some unfairnesses. But I don't know of a better system. And until someone comes along with one, I'm going to stick with this one that we all talk to people about.
Awesome. Gene, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all you've done for our organization and, quite honestly, for our state, especially going through what we're going through right now. I know that I personally have taken part in many of your organization's webinars and teaching tools and all the programming that you're doing. It's important for our state, and so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for what you do up there in Erie. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. If anybody wishes to talk with Gene individually or to connect with him through our offices, please feel free to do so. His contact information will be provided following this interview. He would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.